Adam Sandler was one of SNL's breakout stars, but his last season was marked by lackluster sketches and critical stories about the show's decline. Now, Sandler is opening up about his unceremonious exit from the show, and what he has to say may surprise you. It's easy to look back on Adam Sandler's era of Saturday Night Live with nostalgia-tinted glasses, but at the time it was a difficult period for the show. In March of 1995, New York Magazine wrote an article that was critical of the cast's behavior during production. The story also focused on the show's overall decline in quality. At one point in the article, the reporter revealed how rehearsal for the show was delayed so that Sandler could film a video greeting for Steven Spielberg's birthday. In doing this, the article notes, Sandler frustrated his fellow cast members. Elsewhere, cast member Ellen Cleghorn criticized the show's lack of black writers, while Lorne Michaels also hired established comedians like Chris Elliott and Michael McKean to assist in the show's quality. By the time the season 20 finale came in the spring of 1995, the show had already taken some big hits. Longtime cast members like Mike Myers and Al Franken had already departed mid-season, while newcomer Janeane Garofalo quit because she wasn't getting enough screen time. When David Duchovny hosted the season finale, it would serve as a time capsule of sorts for the show, as big changes were about to come. Though many considered the 20th season of Saturday Night Live to be below average in quality, there were some sketches that stood out from the rest. This was especially the case when Adam Sandler teamed with Chris Farley, as the two comedians' real-life friendship was visible on screen. This was apparent in the recurring Zagat sketch, which the duo reprised for what would become their final Saturday Night Live episode together. In the Zagat sketch, Sandler and Farley play Hank and Beverly, a married couple who are complete opposites. While Farley's Beverly excitedly reads out restaurant recommendations from the guidebook to her husband, Sandler's Hank retorts with increasingly miserable asides.
Day and night she talks. Each word more useless than the next.
For the season 20 finale, the two are eventually joined by Beverly's sister Pauline, played by Duchovny, who joins them to create even more chaos for Sandler's character. Like previous iterations of the Zagat sketch, this final version is a perfect showcase of the duo's on-screen chemistry. It was later included in the Best of Adam Sandler, a DVD release compiling many of Sandler's greatest moments throughout his tenure on the show. Sadly, the sketch was one of the few highlights from the season 20 finale. It's no surprise that many jokes and sketches that aired on Saturday Night Live throughout the 1990s have aged poorly. That said, Sandler's last episode played a key role in some of these tasteless sketches. The episode was far from the worst the show could do at the time, as Sandler also starred in a Canteen Boy sketch with Alec Baldwin that resulted in backlash from viewers. Throughout the David Duchovny episode, Sandler made several appearances that likely wouldn't go over well with modern-day Saturday Night Live audiences. One poorly aged sketch from the episode is the game show You Think You're Better Than Me. Kevin Nealon hosted a fictional game show and played an aggressive dock worker. Throughout the game, it is established that Sandler's character cannot read, and the joke is hammered into the ground. Overall, the entire sketch seems to imply that working-class individuals are less educated, which is likely something you wouldn't find happening on Saturday Night Live these days. In the season 20 finale, the last sketch featured Sandler, Farley, Tim Meadows, Norm Macdonald, and Jay Moore as 5 friends viewing a polar bear exhibit at the zoo. In the sketch, Moore jumps into the polar bear enclosure. He ends up brutally slaughtered, spraying blood all over his 4 friends. Meanwhile, his buddies react nonchalantly to Moore being killed. One by one, the rest of Moore's friends ultimately join him in the enclosure. McDonald plays a straight man in the sketch, until he too decides to jump in. Though the sketch gets an okay reaction from the audience, it makes for an apt ending to this controversial era of Saturday Night Live. Following the decline in ratings and poor reception to season 20 of Saturday Night Live, the show's cast was completely overhauled. David Duchovny's episode ended up being the curtain call for Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, Kevin Nealon, Ellen Cleghorn, Chris Elliott, Michael McKean, Jay Moore, Laura Keitlinger, and Morwenna Banks. In the huge cast shakeup between seasons, season 21 would add many future stars, including Will Ferrell and Darrell Hammond. Unfortunately, the departure of Sandler and Farley wasn't mutual, as the two were fired because executives at NBC didn't like them. Sandler later described learning about his firing from his manager, telling Howard Stern about it years later.
I'm not good at saying goodbye.
But seriously,
they had to get rid of me sometime.
Sandler learned soon after that Farley had also been fired, and recalled being bitter about having to leave. However, he now realizes the decision wasn't up to Saturday Night Live producer Lorne Michaels. Although Sandler would quickly move on from Saturday Night Live to pursue a movie career, Chris Farley returned 3 seasons later in 1997 to host the show.
I'm the new Chris, okay, fellas?
However, the episode ended up being a tragic moment in the show's history, as Farley died only 2 months later. Although he was disappointed about it at the time, Adam Sandler's firing from Saturday Night Live ended up being a blessing in disguise. That same year, he starred in Billy Madison. The film was moderately successful and eventually became a cult classic.
Stop looking at me, Swan!
In the late 90s, Sandler followed up Billy Madison with more films that slowly became commercial hits, including Happy Gilmore, The Waterboy, and The Wedding Singer, the latter of which was his first of 3 rom-coms co-starring Drew Barrymore. As the 2000s rolled around, Sandler quickly became one of the biggest movie stars on the planet, churning out box office hits like Click and Grown Ups. Along the way, Sandler proved that alongside his usual raunchy slapstick comedy, he was also capable of appearing in dramatic films like Punch Drunk Love and Funny People. However, Sandler was still not immune to criticism in this era of his career either. Many of the films he starred in over the years have received a poor critical reception, including Jack and Jill and That's My Boy. Although his more recently acclaimed films and return to stand-up comedy have restored Sandler's goodwill with audiences, the comedian still carried on the negative reaction to his sense of humor from his Saturday Night Live days. The passage of time often brings maturity, which has clearly been the case for Adam Sandler. Sandler ultimately softened towards Saturday Night Live, losing the bitterness he had towards NBC for firing him and Farley in the mid-90s. However, Sandler attributes his attitude at the time to ego, telling AARP in 2022, "I didn't always see clearly then. I wanted to be a big comedian like Eddie Murphy, like Rodney Dangerfield." For a long time, Sandler's mixed feelings towards the show also prevented him from hosting. During an appearance on Norm Macdonald's podcast, he scoffed at the suggestion of returning to host the show, believing himself to be too old. Around the same time, Sandler also began to understand that his and Farley's firing was somewhat meant to be, as their time on the show had naturally come to an end. Although Sandler expressed hesitance towards hosting Saturday Night Live in the past, he changed his mind and decided to accept the invitation in 2019.
I had some of the best years of my life here.
Saturday Night Live fans of all ages highly anticipated the episode's airing, considering that Sandler had not hosted since his firing in 1995. During the opening monologue, Sandler pulled a bold move, and he serenaded the audience with a song about how he was fired from Saturday Night Live. He even invited Chris Rock on stage to join him. The episode certainly felt like a homecoming for Sandler, who reprised Opera Man once again during Weekend Update. He also got to face impressions of himself in the sketch Sandler Family Reunion. Aside from homages to Sandler's past, the comedian also appeared in sketches that have had their own life among current-day Saturday Night Live audiences. The meme-worthy Romano Tours features Sandler as a man promoting tours of Italy who advises unhappy people that his tours will not improve their lives. In the Regtic sketch, Sandler is an old man giving advice to his son about erectile dysfunction. However, the pill that he offers his son may be a cover-up for something more kinky in the bedroom.
It's a pill.
It's a pill.
This lemonade's amazing.
Don't put your mouth on that!
The most memorable moment of Sandler's Saturday Night Live hosting debut came during the end of the show. In the sketch, Sandler stood on stage alone with a guitar, singing a song dedicated to his friend Chris Farley. The song originally made its debut in Sandler's stand-up routine, appearing as the climax of his Netflix special 100% Fresh in 2018. However, performing it in Studio 8H was a much different experience for the comedian. After the show ended, Sandler described the rehearsal process of Farley's song as difficult, considering he had to perform it next to a slideshow of Farley's personal photos and highlights from SNL. He spoke about his emotional reaction to the performance on the Dan Patrick Show.
I was like, oh man, I got to prepare for this for the show to try not to, break down.
Not only did Sandler make it through, but the song remains one of the most heartfelt moments of the show's entire run. Even Jimmy Fallon, who made a cameo in Sandler Family Reunion, spoke about watching the moment in person on The Tonight Show the following week.
You don't realize it when you're there on Saturday Night Live for whatever seasons you are there. You hang out more than your family.
It's a good thing Adam Sandler got his Saturday Night Live hosting debut out of the way, as less than a year later, the world went on lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. After nationwide stay-at-home orders forced Saturday Night Live to halt production, the cast and crew reunited over Zoom to create 3 SNL at-home episodes. In these episodes, cast members self-produced sketches, with huge talents like Brad Pitt and Kristen Wiig appearing in some of them.
Let's do this.
Among those cameos was Sandler, who teamed up with Pete Davidson for the song Stuck in the House, which was about adhering to quarantine guidelines. Sandler's family also appears in the video, as does Rob Schneider. Entertainment Weekly called the song an instant classic after its premiere, and it was later made available to stream on services like Spotify and Apple Music. During the SNL at Home era, Sandler also made a more serious cameo, paying tribute to Hal Wilner. Wilner was the music producer at Saturday Night Live, who died from COVID. The tribute recruited Sandler along with many other former cast members, including Fred Armisen and Maya Rudolph, to speak about the impact Wilner had on them. It was another moment where Saturday Night Live cast members and veterans could come together to pay tribute to someone who helped make so many people laugh over the years.